welcome back to my channel. My name is Holly, this is She Reads. Today I'm going to be going through and telling you guys all about the worst reads that I have read so far this year. If you do not know, I did a video, I think a couple of videos ago, talking about the best books that I have read so far this year. So I will insert up here somewhere or in the description box below, there will be a link to that video if you have not seen it. But today is going to be reserved for talking about the duds. So, sorry authors. So the first book on this list is The Retribution of Mara Dyer by Michelle Hopkins, and I had troubles with this entire series. I put the other two books, this is the final book, I put the other two books in the best category, but honestly they were just right in the middle. And the reason why is because all of the books did this but all of the books are so incredibly slow going. The first and second one in particular, like they were slow going to the point where I was kind of like, do I just want to DNF this? Like I don't even care at this point. It's just nothing is really happening. It's more of the same and I'm bored. But then the last probably this much of the book, like just the last 50 or so pages, all of a sudden gets so incredibly good that you're just like, oh my gosh, you're just reading voraciously, and as soon as it ends, it leaves on such a cliffhanger that you immediately want to start the next book. So for that reason, because this is the first series in a long time that I have read back to back to back, I put it in the top books, but honestly, it was just by a minuscule amount. I should also mention that the way that I'm rating this is 3 stars and under are going in the worst, and 4 and 5 stars are going in the best. I have been really lucky this year. I have read a lot of 4 and 5 star reads, so I wanted to just include those and the best and include the 3s and the worst because I wouldn't have as many to talk about in the worst section. So I rated this a 3 out of 5. And basically this entire trilogy, I kind of have to talk about this in like overall arcing. It takes such a dramatic turn from where it begins. The story ends up being something completely different than what I thought I was getting when I was going into this. And it kind of, I don't know, it just wasn't what I signed up for, and it wasn't something that I probably would have chosen if I had known that was where it was going, if that makes sense. So I didn't really particularly care for this last book because I didn't like the conclusion. I didn't like the way the story, the turn that it took. I didn't really feel that connected to the characters. There was just overall a lot of problems with the books. Yeah, I don't know. It's been a while since I've read them, and I just kind of still feel like icky about these books. Like, what a good opinion to have for a booktuber, right? I feel icky about this book. Well, I do. The next book is a book that I listened to on Audible, and that was The Sundown Motel by Simone St. James. And I had really high hopes for this one. I gave this one a 3 out of 5. I did like it. But this one basically follows a teenage, well, I guess she's not a teenager. She's like in her early 20s. It kind of goes between 2 perspectives. So this teenager moves to this town looking for her aunt, basically. Her aunt has gone missing from this town years ago when she was young in her 20s. And basically our main character has just been obsessed with true crime her entire life. So she's grown up hearing this mystery about her aunt going missing from this motel. Her aunt worked at this kind of creepy haunted motel and went missing from it one day. So this girl moves to this town, starts working at the same motel, and kind of starts to retrace her aunt's footsteps in order to figure out what happened. So the premise was something really interesting to me, and I really liked the idea of the book. Maybe it's just the execution, I don't know. And there was a lot of holes in the plot. Like, there was a lot of things at the conclusion I'm like, that makes no sense. They wouldn't have done that. Like, the whole story could be completely unraveled because, I don't want to give too much away, but what the characters did to get to the big issue that they had, they wouldn't have needed to do in the first place. It's so hard to review books without spoiling. It really is. Basically, the entire plot could be completely undone with one decision that like would have made the most sense to make at the time. So whenever I can like pick up that in a book, it undoes it all for me, because I'm like, okay, really, like they wouldn't have actually done this, and this whole book would have been for nothing. Like it just wouldn't have even happened if they wouldn't have made this silly decision that they wouldn't have even made in real life. The next book is another book that I read on Audible, and it was called Theme Music by T. Marie Vandelli. That's like really hard to say. And the plot of this book is that a woman has experienced an extremely traumatic event when she was 2 years old. When she was 2 years old, someone came into her family home and slaughtered her entire family, leaving her as the only survivor. So now, years later, as a woman in her 30s, this house comes up for sale and she decides to buy it. So she moves back into her family home where her entire family was slaughtered and lives there. So there's a lot of like question about, is this house haunted? Is there mental health issues going on with our main character? She starts to experience a lot of symptoms of being possessed, but you're not sure if it's all in her mind, if the house is haunted, if there's demons in the house, if she's just experiencing mental health issues. You don't know what is going on. So in that regard, it's like really interesting story. And of course, you know me, I love a good haunted house story. But I think the fact that we couldn't trust our main character really hindered me from liking this a lot. I really felt like I couldn't connect with her because I couldn't trust her, because I had no idea what was going on in her mind, whether what she was seeing was real, what she was experiencing was real, or if it was all in her mind. And also the fact that she had like a very close person to her that she kept pushing away during this time, and I didn't think that that was realistic. I didn't think that she would do that in real life. It's really hard for me to connect with characters that don't make decisions that people would make in real life. Like when they do something that's so out of the realm, that's like, no, nobody would do that. Like nobody would do that. It's just hard to connect with them, and then it makes you just kind of like lose interest because you're like, this is unrealistic. So I gave this one also a 3 out of 5. You guys, next is a book that I was so upset that I did not like because I was positive I was going to like it, and that is Dark Souls by Paula Morris. So I had read last year Ruined by Paula Morris, and I absolutely loved it. It was a book that got me completely out of a reading slump, and so I was of the opinion, like, I like this author, I'm gonna pick up anything that I see by her. So when I saw this book on Book Outlet, it was cheap, and I was like, I'm gonna love it, guaranteed. Basically, it is about a main character who has experienced a very traumatic event and has now come with her parents. They've moved to London for about 6 months for her mother's job, and she starts to see ghosts. So ever since this traumatic event, she has been seeing ghosts, but in London, it's one of the most notoriously haunted places on earth, so she really meets some ghosts there. So you just think that this is going to be like so good, so interesting. It was boring. I'm sorry. It was boring. It was predictable. I could guess the plot a mile away. I just did not like it. I gave it a 2 out of 5. I'm like so upset because I thought for sure I was gonna like it. I think I will try this author one more time because I've had one book from her that I really, really enjoyed, one that I didn't care for so much. I don't know if I should compare publication dates and see if maybe this was an earlier book and then the other one that I really liked, maybe it was written later. Maybe she's had more practice since then. I don't know, but I didn't like this one. Sorry, Paula. Another disappointing read that I listened to on Audible was the sequel to One of Us is Lying, which I absolutely loved. This book was called One of Us is Next by Karen M. McManus. I absolutely loved One of Us is Lying, loved the characters. I think I loved almost every single character in that book. I connected with all of them. I really felt for them. I really was involved in their story. I wanted to know what happened. Basically in that book, a bunch of kids, it was almost like a Breakfast Club situation. A bunch of kids in school from like different groups are all in detention on the same day, and in the middle of this detention, one of the kids up and dies. And it starts to look like a murder, and all of these kids are implicated in the murder. So basically the story is told from the perspective from each of these teenagers, and you don't know who it is that did it. And you know it has to be one of them, but you really trust every single character and you don't think any of them are capable of doing this. So I really, really love that book, and this one is a sequel to it. I just wished, because I really loved those characters, I wanted this book to have those same characters, but it's not. It's with all of their younger brothers and sisters, and I just didn't find that. I didn't like the characters as much. I didn't connect with them as much. And basically what it is it's a copycat of the original What Happened. So somebody like stages this murder, and like basically somebody starts like tormenting these other kids, these siblings of these original 5 kids. And I just found that I didn't really care about it at all. I also gave it a 3 out of 5. The last book that we are going to talk about on this list is Wilder Girls by Rory Power. This one has basically been described as a retelling of The Lord of the Flies. It's basically during a pandemic situation, which is, I read it before the pandemic, but it's basically kind of a pandemic situation. There is this worldwide virus. These girls are stuck at this boarding school, basically, like way far off in the middle of nowhere. They've pretty much been completely forgotten about, and they are left to their own devices. So I'm trying to figure out how to get off this island, because the military for the longest time had been providing them with food, but then like that stops, and it's just, they have to figure out what to do next. And it's a group of girls on their own trying to figure this out. It left me with really yucky feelings, and that is the same way that I felt about reading The Lord of the Flies in high school. I remember reading that book, and I just felt like ick after I read it. Like it just gave me a very heavy feeling, and I just felt like that's the only way I can describe it. I just felt icky after reading it, and it was the same thing with this one. It just did not give me a good feeling. I just felt like almost a little bit depressed after reading it, and it was not my cup of tea. And I was really upset because I bought this one for full price at Indigo. So I thought it was going to be really good. I was really interested in it. The synopsis sounded great to me, but it's even worse when you don't like a book that you paid full price for. Like this book, Canadian, is $24.99. I paid $25 plus tax for this book, and I gave it a 2 out of 5. That's the worst ever. Well, you guys, that pretty much wraps up my worst reads that I've read so far this year. I hope that you enjoyed this list. I am really sorry if I talked about one of your favorite books on here and I didn't like it. I'm sorry, we're all allowed to have our own opinions, so don't hate me in the comments, but let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of these books and what your thoughts on them were. I hope you guys are having an awesome day. I will see you in my next video.